You know, we throw the word legend around a lot when we talk about video games, but what does it really mean?
Well, to figure that out, we're not going to start with some high score. We're going to start with a story about me getting it completely and totally wrong.
Yeah, see, for me, it all started on the outside, on trail bikes. While other kids were inside mastering joysticks, I was just covered in the mud and dirt. My parents knew getting me 3 dirt bikes by the time I was 13 would keep me on the right trail. I really lived in these two different worlds. There was the physical world outside on the trails, and then when the sun went down, it was the digital world of Atari.
And that split, that childhood, it ended up defining everything that came next. So back in 1990, I had this big dream. I wanted to bring those two worlds, my two worlds, under one single roof.
I pictured this place that would capture the feeling of both the racetrack and the arcade. A place built really on everything that I was passionate about.
And it was huge. We took over this old grocery store in Gladstone, Oregon, and just filled it with everything I loved.
We imported a Canadian King 50-foot custom-built 8-lane slot car track, an indoor dirt track for RC off-road buddies and trucks, with a hand-painted mountain mural on the back wall. I even built a mini golf course by hand.
And of course, we had an arcade, which we went shopping for our first 3 game consoles that we thought were big hits. What separates a game that was just a huge hit from a true, undeniable classic that lasts forever?
To me, this game was the crown jewel.
I mean, it had this big cabinet, real steering wheels. It felt like my entire childhood right there on the screen. I was absolutely 100% convinced that this game was a masterpiece. A game that would stand the test of time.
I was just completely blinded by my own bias. And I wasn't just a little wrong. I was fundamentally mistaken.
My personal love for the game didn't actually make it a legend. It had faded. You know, years later, the controls just feel mushy. The art is kind of messy, and that's when it hit me. A true legend has to be more than just a reflection of your own nostalgia. By '93, things started to get quieter at the arcade. And the reason why, it was right there in my own house, with my own kids. There was this massive shift happening. And as an arcade owner, I was pretty much the last person to see it coming.
Kids would pop into Fast Track, sure. They'd drop a few quarters, play for a bit, and then they'd go home and play these incredible 16-bit games for hours and hours. The future that I thought I was building in my arcade, it was already sitting in everyone's living room. And really, you just can't argue with the math. At my place, maybe you'd spend $2 for 15 minutes of play, but for $30, you could buy a Sega Genesis cartridge and play it literally forever. The value was it was completely unbeatable. The whole industry got desperate. We started seeing the rise of the nickel arcade. It was like this final gasp for air, where arcades would charge a tiny fee to get in, and then just a nickel per game. It was such a clear sign that the era was over.
How ironic that my dream of bringing my love of the physical world and the digital world, both of which I loved so much, had now become the reason behind the rise of home consoles. People were loving being able to get the feeling they were virtually doing exciting outdoor activities without investing huge amounts of money for a dirt bike or a race car or anything else that video games rendered in fun factor. But you know, closing the business, it wasn't just about the money. There were some really high highs and low lows in this journey. I loved working at this place. Everything about it was multiple dreams coming true at once. I wasn't just an owner watching from the sidelines. I was right there in the mix. I would often race on the tracks with the customers. I think the best I ever did was a second-place finish in a stock class team-associated buggy race. And on the slot car track? Forget it, I never did that good. And the fun didn't stop when we locked the doors. Many times, after hours, friends would hang back and play in the arcade with us. Just pure competitive fun. We really loved it all. And our loyal customers, they loved it too. They showed up every week, even if the business wasn't perfect, always excited for what we'd add next. So you can imagine how incredibly hard it was to make the call to close it. Selling it all off, watching it go piece by piece, that really tore me up. We had put absolutely everything into fast-track recreations. All of our funds, our heart and soul, our blood and sweat. And looking back now, people ask me, would I do it again? Hell yes, of course I would. Who wouldn't? Everyone knows that all good things must end at some point, but did we even think about that back then? Not really. We were focused totally on the moment. And what a great moment it was. And really, saying all good things must end fits this narrative perfectly. It's exactly how our legends and rock and roll heroes live on in our memories. If you have a dream, any dream, just go ahead and do it. Of course, it doesn't last forever, but your memories of that dream, those live on forever. But when the dust finally settled, that loss forced me to ask a much deeper question. Not about what's popular right now, but about what truly lasts. What makes something endure forever? And this right here, this became my obsession. It couldn't just be about sales numbers, and it couldn't be about how much I personally loved something. There had to be some kind of objective, almost technical quality that separated a temporary hit from a permanent, honest-to-God legend.
Think about a classic rock song, right? 30 years later, it comes on the radio and it still hits you. The magic is still there, never faded away. A true legend is exactly like that. The genius of its design is timeless, and that feeling it gives you is permanent. And that is the real difference between a faded hit and an enduring legend. My beloved Mickey Thompson, that was a hit that just turned into noise. It faded. But Pac-Man? Tetris? Come on, they're still perfect. They're still addictive. The magic never left. So, if we're going to find these true legends, we need a system. We've got to strip away all our personal nostalgia and apply a cold, hard, objective test to figure out what gives a game that timeless quality. So I came up with this, a 5-point scorecard to really evaluate a game's core design objectively. First up, graphics and art. And we're not talking about realism here, but does it have a distinct, timeless soul? Second, sound and music. Is the audio more than just bleeps and bloops? Does it create an atmosphere you'll never forget? Third, and this is a big one, gameplay and controls. How does the game feel? Is it intuitive? Is it responsive? Is it still satisfying to play today? Fourth, pick up and play. Can a brand new player walk up, understand the goal, and start having fun in under a minute? This is all about pure, accessible design. And finally, the big one that ties it all together, the timeless factor. Does it all combine to create an experience that can jump generations and still feel absolutely brilliant? And the ultimate test? I call it the trip home. A legendary game has to be so fundamentally good that it doesn't need the flashing lights and the smell of popcorn to be great. It has to work just as well in your living room on any console decades after it first came out. So this scorecard, it's not just a theory. It's really the beginning of a mission. It's a quest to apply this test and find out which games from history have truly, honestly earned the title of legend. At the end of the day, the whole test boils down to these simple questions. We're not asking, hey, do you remember loving this? We're asking, is it still great right now? Does the art still hold up? Is the gameplay still fun? And can you hand it to someone today and just watch them get totally hooked?
And we're going to start with the absolute giants, the games I watched fill up coin boxes in my arcade, the very same ones my kids were playing on their Genesis at home. We're going to put them through the ringer and see if they actually survived the trip home. Because here's the thing, not every game that was once popular deserves to be remembered forever. Some were just noise, but others were timeless art. And now we have a way to tell the difference. So, which ones do you think are going to make the cut?